Hey guys, welcome back to Good Morning Marketers. Today I'm joined by the amazing Keaton Open. So Keaton is a digital marketing executive here at Michelin Stones, and he's joining us today to talk all things Google Ads, aren't we, Keats?
Yes, it's great to be here. I basically just be able to give you a basic run through on any questions that you have surrounding Google Ads.
Yeah, perfect. So look, Keats, well, I think a good place to start is for anyone who I'm gonna assume people watching this are not currently running ads, okay?
Yep.
So and obviously, can you just run us through, by the way, I suppose the purpose of Google Ads and why someone even look at them in the first place?
So, sort of the purpose behind Google Ads is you want to be boosting your brand awareness, you want to be driving sales, you want to be doing leads generation. It's sort of anything. To be honest, any company can run it. Sort of brand awareness is something that most companies are going to want. You've got display campaigns, you run videos, anything that's going to get your name out there in front of people. So it's really good at reaching cold audiences. You can use it to reach your hot audiences, but yeah, for cold traffic, it is your go-to.
Okay, and so obviously with Google Ads, we know that we can target certain keywords, etc. Obviously, that's kind of a given; everyone understands that. But so when it comes to essentially, let's just take a B2B business, for example, right? Just to kind of keep things simple, because I know there's so many different uses for different sectors, etc. Let's say it's like an accountancy firm,
Right.
okay. So if I was like an accountancy practice and I'm looking for people who might be searching for accountants in the local area, or might be looking for specialist advice for a certain aspect of accountancy, etc. What steps and gates do I need to walk through to get these campaigns rolling?
So the first step that you really need to do is a little bit of audience research. So Google Ads has a tool on there where you can review existing keywords. You can see sort of what their monthly search volume is. You can see how much like the average cost per click is. So you can see how much you're going to be needing to spend in order to appear at the top of that rank. I would say you want to gather a list of these keywords, sort of understand how much the average cost per click is going to be for you, and then you'd go from there into your strategy. Now, for the strategy side of things, you want to decide what your goal is. You're going to decide whether you want to be boosting your brand awareness or whether you want to be targeting lead generation or sales. Of course, for an accounting agency, I would say you want to be doing lead generation, maybe a little bit of brand awareness. So for lead generation, typically your go-to would be a search campaign. It's sort of the most basic one. That's sort of the campaign where you're going to be showing up in people's search results if they search for anything surrounding what your accounting agency is looking at. So I don't know, it would be sort of like legal services.
Yeah, so it might be
or fine.
Tax returns,
Fine,
VAT
yeah.
returns, and maybe like FD support, something like that.
So your financial services. So anyone who's searching for terms like that, you'd have done your keyword research, you would have found which keywords you want to be looking for, and then you'd tailor your ads to focus on those people that are searching for that. So if you had someone that's searching for tax returns, you want to make sure that when your ad is displayed, you've got tax returns in the headline. You want to make sure that your ads are tailored towards the people that you're looking at. There are a few other campaign structures that you could use. You could potentially look into using a Performance Max campaign. If you're starting out in Google Ads, it's definitely one that I would recommend. It's much easier to set up. It's sort of Google's beginners campaign, but it's also something that people who are more advanced can use to their advantage as well. You sort of throw lots of different assets at it, and it will learn the best place for your conversion goal, and it will learn the best place to put your placements. So it can be in display, it could be in video, it could be in Google search, it could be sort of any of the placements that Google has to offer. It's definitely a good one to use.
Completely, and I think something that many businesses get wrong and don't fully understand is actually just understanding the numbers around what their data is telling you from Google Ads, right? Because it's very easy to say, let's go spend 5, 10, 15, 20 grand a month on Google Ads, but how do we actually know A, it's going to be profitable, B, it's scalable, and C, it just makes sense?
Yeah.
So one of the things I always like to kind of explain to our clients is like, okay, great, so we've got this product with all these range of products, we've got these services, etc. The first thing is, do we fully understand the numbers of these products, the numbers of these services, in a sense of gross profit margins and how much it costs us to deliver that product, that service? Because once we understand what our margins are, we can really understand, I suppose, how much we can afford to spend to go and acquire a customer.
Yeah.
Because essentially, it's probably fair to say, Keith, that all we're doing on Google Ads really is buying customers, right? We're buying traffic. which we want to ultimately turn into a customer
Yeah.
or a client. And if we're going to buy customers and clients, that's fine. And if that's the stream that people want to kind of business want to kind of focus on for those short to mid-term results, we need to make sure that we can do that profitably. So, like, is there like a gross profit margin of a product or a service that you think that it probably doesn't make sense to run Google Ads? Because I've worked with some businesses in the past where it's like the margins are like 10%, 15%.
Yeah.
And it's like you start running Google Ads, but then you don't even get to that point because you think the only way that you're actually going to make any money here is if you acquire a customer for like £4, and the chances of that are pretty slim.
So yeah, it's sort of difficult to say, really. I mean, the determining factor would be sort of what your audience size is going to be. So, for example, I could give an example. Like my father, he runs sort of like a decking company. They're probably not going to use Google Ads so much because they've got 30, 40 grand deals that they're doing with caravan parks. That's probably not something that they're going to want to be doing because you're targeting a very, very small number of people. Obviously, the return is really, really high, but because the group is so small, I wouldn't say there's much point.
Not even there in the first place, yeah.
But then on the contrary, if you're running e-commerce ads, I've run accounts before, and I've been hitting an 8 to 10% margin. So quite a big uplift for e-commerce. That was in sort of gym equipment.
Okay.
But that was something that I did manage to hit quite a good cost of sale on.
Really? So even with those low profit margins as well?
Yeah. So it was about 1,000% ROAS that we were targeting, and we hit just over that. So it was quite a good campaign, that.
And for anyone who doesn't understand what ROAS is, can you mind to explain that a little bit?
So your ROAS is your return on ad spend. Normally Google will put this as a percentage, but Facebook, for example, like to put it as a number. So for example, 1,000% ROAS would be you've got 1,000% more than what you put in, or it would also be a 10% cost of sale. That's the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah. And so, because we're kind of back to what I was saying a minute ago about how sometimes businesses don't fully understand the numbers of their products or their services, would you recommend every single business who's even looking to explore Google Ads have a crystal clear understanding of what is the minimum ROAS we need to achieve to even make this break even?
100%. So if you're running e-commerce, you're going to need to have your ROAS set in stone. You're going to need to know how much you're willing to put into a product and turn that into a sale before it turns unprofitable. And same if you're like an accounts agency, you're going to want to know what your cost per acquisition needs to be,
completely.
or your cost per lead needs to be. You might not know exactly what your cost per lead needs to be from the get-go, because as you're getting into it, you might not know your conversion rates.
Yeah.
So it's something that forms over time. With e-commerce, it's sort of from the get-go, you know exactly what your target needs to be. But with sort of your B2B side of things, it takes a little bit of time to get to know what sort of your target is.
Completely. And I think just on the B2B side, before we get onto e-commerce, but like I think in terms of the whole pitch, it needs to be understood to make this work on the Google Ads side. The first thing, by the way, is I think it's understanding, Google Ads to me is a short-term sales activity, i.e. what that means, we're spending money now, we're expecting results short to mid-term, right? And we usually expect a return fairly quickly is the expectation.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term marketing growth activity like something like SEO or investing in PR or attending conferences and speaking at conferences, all that kind of stuff where you can't connect the dots between that activity and what that's doing to the business in terms of revenue straight away. Sometimes almost like a treadmill you've got to work on. Now, in terms of the clear picture, in terms of what I see Google Ads end-to-end, what we need to be looking at is obviously understanding our numbers for the product or the service, our gross profit margins, understanding what we can afford to spend to acquire a customer. Obviously, going for that whole research strategy phase that you were saying about research the keywords, build out the strategy, launch the ads, etc. Keeping an eye on our cost per click. Obviously, traffic goes somewhere, whether it's landing page, a service page, etc. Making sure that page is optimized to extract the opportunity. Because obviously, let's say it's 100 clicks at £1, and it takes an average 100 clicks to generate one lead. That gives a cost per lead of £100.
Exactly.
And then usually what happens, a human being comes in on this part, and we're relying on skills to qualify the opportunity, take them through a sales process, which is repeatable, and then ultimately win that client or qualify that opportunity out. Now, if it takes that individual on average, how that human being performs 3 or 4 leads for every one client that walk in the door, and once again, if we're saying it's £100 for a lead and it takes 4 leads on average for them to win a client, we know our cost per acquisition is £400.
Yeah.
Now, if you're selling a product or a service which on average is like 5 to 10k in revenue, profit margins is 70%, probably makes loads of sense, doesn't it? if we're selling something at £1,000 and our GP is already 30%, so we're already making 300. That's before we applying any marketing spend to it, and it's just costs 400 quid to acquire that customer. We're actually at a loss of 100 quid, right?
Exactly.
So it's all about really understanding those numbers. But on the e-commerce side, Keith, so help me understand, because obviously e-commerce is huge. You know, it's massively. It's not even emerging. It's just a huge market. You know, we know brick and mortar's been struggling for some time. Now, for new e-commerce sellers, you know, what kind of avenues are available to them on Google Ads?
So one of the best placements that you can use within Google Ads for e-commerce would be their shopping placements. A lot of people in the past might have been running standard shopping ads or smart shopping ads. Google have recently removed the smart shopping feature and turned that into what I was referring to earlier as the Performance Max. Is definitely sort of the go-to that I would say for any e-commerce company. An example strategy that I used to use for it, I would break down the campaigns by sort of the cost of the product. So let's say you're a store that's running a really wide variety of products. You've got some products that cost maybe £10. You've got some that maybe cost £500-600. If you're targeting ROAS, you don't want that to be in one campaign, because obviously your first campaign that's going to be targeting a £10 product, you don't want that spending the same cost per sale as one that's targeting for a £500 product. Also, the audience targeting is going to be very different. So that's why I like to break those up in that way. And then within a Performance Max campaign, you also have your asset groups. So this is sort of the who that you're going to want to be targeting. I normally break those up by either the brand. So if you're an e-commerce store that's got lots and lots of brands, I would have lots of asset groups that break it up by brand, or you can always do it by the product type. So for example, that weightlifting store I referred to earlier, we broke it down by, so this was bench press equipment, then you had your weightlifting bars. You got lots of different equipment pieces, and we broke it up like that. Someone who's maybe looking for a gym t-shirt is not going to be looking necessarily for a weightlifting bar. So that's why it's really important to separate those.
Makes sense. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's so much potential on Google Ads. I do think some businesses neglect it. I think most of the businesses that I speak to who decide not to run those ads, I mean, don't get me wrong, by the way, it's not for everyone, to be clear, because there are some businesses who work within some niches or some industries where there is just no search volume because people just aren't searching for it. However, there are some businesses where there's plenty of search volume, but maybe they've been set poor expectations by the agency they're working with around when they can start to see results, right? Keith, just on this point, what's a realistic time frame when people can start to see results? Because I think people forget there needs to be this learning phase. So can you explain what a learning phase actually is? And maybe what's a realistic time frame for us to expect our ads to actually start performing for us?
Yeah, definitely. So on Google, when you run a campaign, for the majority, you're going to be using something called a machine learning campaign or a machine learning bid strategy. So one of these is maximize conversions, or you've got maximize clicks, where Google will try and use its machine learning to find who's most likely to click or convert on your ad. And for this to work, it's going to need to learn. Google typically will say it takes about 5 days from launch for it to learn. But sometimes if your ads might not get approved straight away, that can be extended. So if your ad's not approved for a week, and then you've got the 5 day learning period after that, from launch, they're not going to have learned for 12 days, just as an example. And then with Performance Max, it's a very similar thing. Pretty much any strategy you use with Performance Max will always use machine learning, which is one of the reasons why I love it, especially with the way that data is going now. It's getting much harder to get that data, and using machine learning is a really, really good way to get around that. They say on Google Ads it'll be 5 days, but normally it's around closer to the 40-day mark to really, really see how it's performing properly. I mean, you can have it in the first 5 days, you can see it start doing better, but after 40 days, that's when you really, really see the success come in.
And why do you think Google say 5 days then if we know it takes 44? Because by the way, I agree with you. I actually think some instances it's two months, you know, and sometimes that push maybe 3 for those really high competitive keywords.
Definitely.
But why do you think they say 5 days?
I feel Google probably want you to, I don't know, maybe to give you some optimism, I suppose. They sort of want you to spend your money with them. And I suppose if you showed a company that they could see results in 2 months' time, they might not be so keen, because if they come to Google Ads in the first place, they're probably looking for the short-term results.
Yeah.
I would say with Google Ads, you're looking at short to mid-term, but mid-term for Performance Max is definitely something that you can have.
Yeah, okay, cool. But yeah, guys, I mean, look, Keats, thank you for jumping on. Really appreciate it. You know, Good Morning Marketers is here to support anyone really who either takes care of their own marketing within their business, or is in a marketing specific role, or is a business owner who is looking for ways to kind of level up their own marketing function internally. And guys, look, as always, you know, thank you for listening. Feel free to subscribe, share, like, do your thing wherever you listen to this. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing another episode of Good Morning Marketers. And if you ever want a conversation with any of us here at Mitchelton Stones, just drop us a message, and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Keats, legend.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.